Hi there, my name is Aaron Short and welcome to my YouTube channel. In 1965, Bob Dylan took to the stage at the Newport Folk Festival with his Fender Stratocaster, to the dismay of thousands of his fans. Today, Maury Rutch will go live on the Monday Martin Show and will surely upset tens of viewers with his electric guitar and electric amplifier. How you doing, Maury?
I'm doing very well. I like the math there. That makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you stuck to the, you almost went into dozens, and that would have been too many.
I don't know how many people were at the Newport Folk Festival in 1965. Can you remember?
Me? No.
Oh, I've not even been drinking. I'm in the funny mood today. Watch out. Watch out. I'm in the funny mood. It's because of the electric guitar. I'm electric.
Ouch.
I've got electricity going through my body. This will be fun. Now, first
Do
of
you
all,
remember when they invented fire? Excuse me.
fine. Of course, I invented it. First of all, I hear that glorious hum of the electric guitar. So, can you just turn the guitar down? Oh,
It's down.
Oh, so what's that from? It must be from the amp. Is the amp
It
on?
might be.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, there's nothing we can do. It's fine. It's not bothering me too much. And that's rock and
roll.
That's rock and roll. Exactly. We'll have this. This is going to go into our conversation. So, where was I? I think this will be an interesting episode because I do have a big interest in electric guitar. I love it, and I'm kind of on a journey right now, kind of moving from the digital to the analog. Actually, I'm not giving up on digital. Digital is great. I'll tell you why digital is great. Because, like, for example, right now, we could turn it off. It wouldn't be making that noise. Digital is quieter. It's very easy to record with. It's great for live streaming. And I did go live on Thursday with my Fender amp through the aux box into the computer. And I thought it sounded excellent, if I do say so myself. So that's definitely very valid. Very valid, right? You saw that episode, right, Maury?
Yep.
I thought it sounded great. That's a great way to go. It really is. But when you play, and this is something that's new to me the last few weeks, when I play through the amp in the room, and then I've been comparing it to like the digital stuff, obviously it's a different sound because with the digital stuff you're hearing like what would be the mic'd amp in another room through headphones. Okay, that's the difference. But there's something about a tube amp in the room that just sounds incredible to me. And obviously we're not hearing that today. We're hearing a microphone in front of Maury's amp. Okay, sounds great, but I bet in the room when that thing is cranked, it just feels and sounds amazing for Maury. And that's what I enjoy. I love that feeling of the analog and the tubes. And I've also tried solid state through a real cab, and that doesn't sound as good either to me. There's something about a big cabinet, a large size cabinet, not even a 212, like just a regular size guitar combo. There's something about that, like the synergy with the tubes in there, that just gives me a really great feeling when I play it in the room. I love that. Yeah. So I thought today would be great because I'm kind of on a journey right now, moving into getting the real amp and the pedal board set up. That's something I'm now working on, which I'll cover on the channel. I've done a few things recently with like a mini effects board and the Fender amp, but I'm going to work on more of a permanent solution. So once we are fully out of lockdown, I can start a rock and roll band again, be Jimi Hendrix. But that's my ambition this year.
Nice.
But I thought this would be great because Maury's had this rig for a while. He's sold many amps and electric guitars at his store, so he's a great person to ask. He also does gigs in a band, so we can really ask Maury a lot of questions, and I've got a lot of questions. But also, what a great thought! People that have bought, say, their first Martin from Maury acoustic guitar that want to move into electric. This could be really great for them as well, right? So maybe Maury can take this from that angle. People that are watching, we have a lot of acoustic players here, so maybe we can kind of advise people what they might want to get, because this is a huge subject. Another reason I'm not discussing my rig today is because I've got enough questions here about amps, guitars and pedals to fill the time easily. So I'll do my rig in a few months time, but I think it'd be great if we kind of focus today on the basics and take this as kind of like, if you're new to electric, what would you need to get? What would Maury recommend? What's working for him? And anything we should be aware of as we go. Because this is a very complicated subject, right, Maury? I could spend an hour just talking about pickups for electric guitars or even just amps alone. So we'll try and keep it kind of streamlined and with that kind of approach. All right.
Yep.
All right, cool. So I'll just go over to the chat and so we'll say hi to our friends. Of course, I have to resize this every time. Thank you, Ecamm. I saw Maury doing this on his show the other day as well. I put LOL because I could relate to it. Even though I don't play electric, Roeth says, I'm looking forward to this episode. Great. And, you know, clean electric isn't that far off from acoustic through a good amp either. That's why I like it. You know, Maury just played his own songs at the start there that he normally plays on acoustic. And it sounded, you know, dare I say it sounded just as good in a different way. We're going to get in so much trouble today from the Martin fans. Sorry, guys.
Well, yeah.
And girls. Sorry, guys and girls. Right, Mike says you've got a Duncan in the bridge. That's right. So he's got a Fender Strat there, and we can see in the bridge he's got a little different looking pickup. That's a mini humbucker, right, Maury?
Yes, sir. Good eye, Duncan. Who said that?
That was Mike, not Duncan.
Mike.
Duncan made the pickup.
I'm going to call you Duncan now.
Me and BMO think very similar. First Dylan went electric, and now Maury. Rock on! Oh, don't worry, we'll have some distortion later on.
Is there such being compared to Dylan? I can't get away from it.
I know. Is there such a thing as a pickup sniffer? There's such a thing as a Strat sniffer. Definitely, that would be me as well. Olds, how you doing? Hi, Aaron, Maury, and everyone else. Mike says, "Is that a roller nut?" And also, what's the nut on the guitar? Let's answer the question now. Why would you have one of these roller nuts on the electric? Why not just a regular nut that comes with the guitar?
Well, the roller nut, what happens when you use the trem bar, the tremolo, it'll actually decrease and increase the pitch of the string, and the string travels through the nut slot. Not much differently than bending a string on the acoustic, but it travels a lot more often. And the roller nut allows the string to come back in tune. So that's the big thing there. It's not necessary, but it's an added feature that I really, one of the reasons I actually decided to get this specific guitar, I like that feature a lot.
Kooky, salut! Kooky always told me with an electric guitar you need tube amps, and with acoustic guitar you need impulse responses. But he's just made a new pedal board on his YouTube channel, which is all analog. So he's now going fully analog with everything. I think 2001 will be the year of the tube, of the analog rig. I really do. I think a lot of people are getting back to basics right now. Old says, no sound holes. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
Everyone's freaking out.
Short show.
Kooky, Roeth, you don't need to play them. Just buy them and collect them. That's right. Play the guitar? Why would you do that? You just buy them. You just get them in their boxes, open them up, sniff them, and put them on the shelf. Lightning within 200 feet here, and Big Thunder may lose internet. Don't say that, BMO. I didn't know that. Now I'm freaking out myself.
Ouch. That's close.
Yeah. David Belcher, hello from Oregon. Hi, David. Welcome. How you doing? Thanks for being here. Jack says we have some acoustics on the racks. We have backup if this thing goes south. Oh, yeah, I see them. Patsy and Bernard in the UK. Vic says, I'm shocked. LOL. Hi, Aaron. Hi, Maury. All the electric jokes. BMO, stop it. Why are you're near me. We have electrical storms. I guess it's the electric guitar. It's creating the electricity in the air. Get ready for the big rock solo on the show. Hey, T. How you doing? How goes it? We're all doing great. Thank you. Skip Russell. Hi from rainy Boston. Was not expecting electric, but interested. Very cool. Kooky says, amp in the room. A deluxe reverb kills any digital amp. I would say any tube amp. There's a saying on the acoustic guitar forum from Doug Young, right? The cheapest microphone is better than any acoustic guitar pickup. That's quite out there, but I'll agree with that kind of 90%. Now, I would say any tube amp kills any modeler through a PA speaker.
Yeah, ish. I'd probably agree with that.
There's just something about... I've actually got a video which I haven't released yet. I've been doing some comparisons in secret, and I don't know if I'll release the video or not, but I can tell you this. Even, like I said, even a high-powered solid-state power amp through a real cab does not have the fullness and depth of a really good tube amp and a speaker. There's something about it which is great. And then some of these new amps allow you to run a direct out into the PA, like I think the Mesas do. Does your amp have that on it?
No, mine's a little bit older than that, but the newer versions of a lot of Mesas do have the cab clone direct output, and that works.
Yeah, and my Synergy has it. My Synergy's here. That has it too, and it sounds very good. But also, you know what? You can just throw a mic in front of it, because who cares? A mic in front of a guitar speaker at a gig is absolutely fine. You know, it's not going to be a problem with feedback or anything. So let's just do that. That's what I would do. The mic is always the best thing, because it picks up all that kind of rattling of the box and everything and the ambience, and it's just real. You know, it's cool.
Yeah.
Ice Coffee Tones, how you doing? The telly with large frets and 11 strings make for easy transition back and forth from acoustic. So that's the kind of thing I want to talk about today. That's excellent. Yeah, you could in fact put 11s on your electric and your acoustic if you wanted to. You know. Yeah. Or you can play the acoustic, and then when you play the electric, it will feel much easier to play because you're used to the heavier strings. That's another good thing. I
had 11s
on
this for about a year.
Yeah. I've actually gone down to nine gauge on electric for most of them, but I used to play 10s all the times, and I think Stevie Ray Vaughan played 12s or 13s and then tuned them down. Like that just probably sounds like an acoustic. Bob Dobson, hi Aaron and Maury and my friends in the chat. Weather is extreme rain here today. Glad to be inside and learning with you. Bob was there on Thursday. We were discussing tube amps as well. There was a lot of tube amp fans there on Thursday. It was great. Thomas Moore says hi. Yeah, they're all playing the old Fenders and stuff. It's great. This Fender is great for clean stuff. This little Princeton, really cool. Spoon, make that he also does gigs in many bands. Oh, so Maury's a busy man. He doesn't talk about a lot of this stuff. Thomas Moore has several electrics. Sandy Hills, hi, joining in as I like Fenders. So Sandy watches me on Sundays. I do obviously play a lot of acoustic guitar, but she actually loves the electric guitar, and she's always asking me to play more electric on the show on Sundays. So that's cool. Yep, she's very happy. Pooh Ninja, Ibanez, seems like a great first guitar. Learning the floating trem. Yeah, we'll talk about trems. Thomas Moore says, I have 3 Fender Strats and 2 G&L and a Legacy, which are great. Yeah. Jim says, hi folks from Vermont. I've got to learn how to play better before the wife grants permission for another guitar. Oh. Really? Hey Billy. Hi Aaron. How do you cope with feedback when amplifying your acoustic? Turn it down. No, I don't. It depends on the acoustic. Some of my acoustic guitars just don't feed back, like the Anthem ones. And then the only time I really had that problem was with like a soundboard pickup when I'm in the corner of the room. And then the thing I learned to do there is to just whack up the high pass filter, just cut all the low end. And Billy plays bass, so he would like that. Bass players like it when you cut all the low end from your acoustic anyway. Yeah. They always want you to do that. We've got loads of chats here. Thank you, everyone. We will start the show in a second, I promise. You see what I mean about the time? I've been interested in the PRS SE hollow body with the piezo ever since I saw Lawrence Juba playing one. Goes from acoustic to electric on one guitar. Yes, Jack, that does look interesting. Great value, very versatile. But I will, don't think that a piezo in an electric guitar will sound just like a good acoustic guitar. I mean, it might sound like a piezo in an acoustic, but I don't know. That's another topic. I won't go into that rabbit hole. But I've done that before. I've got a piezo in a guitar, and I've run it to a PA, and then I would put it through an Aura, and I would play electric. But I don't know, sometimes that gets kind of confusing as well. Spoon says, Keith Richards always stressed that acoustics and electrics aren't different instruments, just different guitars. I agree. The guitar is the guitar. That's a great point, yeah. That's motivation to practice. So basic question, when to choose Strat versus Tele versus Jazzmaster? Okay, we'll get into that. We're going to start with the guitar. We'll ask Maury why he plays that guitar. In fact, let's do it now. We've got so many chats. This is great. Thank you. I can't believe it. This is more popular than the Martin Show. Okay, that's it. If we get more than 40 viewers today, I'm changing the format. All right. Wow, this is great. Okay, so Maury, let's start with the guitar. It's a Fender Strat. I love Fender Strats. All my heroes played them. Why do you play that guitar?
It's a good question. When I first started playing guitar, I had some no-name that wasn't a copy of a Les Paul, it wasn't a copy of a Strat. I often talk to some friends of mine that still might know where that guitar is because a circle of like 5 different musicians. Sort of, one person bought it, sold it to the other guy, then they sold it to me, and I sold it to him. I'm trying to remember. I probably had a J.C. Penney Harmony, if I'm remembering right, copy of a Strat. And it's funny now. Way back then, I learned to play guitar when I was 14. So I'm 14, 15, 16 years old when I finally started getting that imitation Strat. And I bet you it was 10 years later before I even recognized there's probably a good difference between single coil and the humbucker, Strat and Les Paul. I mean, I'm not proud to say it, but I was probably playing guitar longer than 10 years before I recognized that electric guitars can sound different. I just had it in my mind. You plug the guitar into an amp and you get whatever sound the amp gives you. It doesn't matter at all if it's a Strat, if it's a Les Paul, if it's humbuckers, if it's single coils, whatever you plug in here means nothing. It's all amp. So I never had a good amp until much later. So when you think about why I started on the Strat, it must just have been completely coincidental. Maybe I liked the way it looked. I certainly was. It was a decade before I knew any subtleties about why I might like a Strat. And then I spent 10 more years playing imitation Strats by, some good Yamaha copies. I think it was called a Pacifica. This might have been in the early 90s. So I'm not sure why I was drawn to it, but then I definitely looked at I got a good Mexican Strat after that, played that for a number of years, and then finally got this as a gift from Lori on my 40th birthday. So I didn't get a great Strat until 10 years ago, but I've been in the mindset that I like Strats for 25 years, and I never really had a real one until very recently.
I had the Pacifica as well when I was it was like one of my first electrics. Yeah. So again, we could just talk for hours about, like I said, guitars and pickups right now. Let's just focus in on what we have here. We have a Fender Strat, right? We have those 3 pickups. Can you just play us just first of all, tell us what sounds you can get and what sounds you need to get from those pickups, and just play something so we can hear what those sounds are like. Because I like to put things in context. When I play a cover gig, I need like a clean, kind of acoustic-y sounding sound for chords. When I do like Wonderwall or something. And then I need like a crunchy sound to do like Tom Petty. And I need kind of a heavier sound for like Green Day covers. So what sounds do you need, and can you give us some examples of those pickups? Like let's focus on the pickups for now. I know we're plugged into the amp. We'll focus on that next. But what pickups do you have in the guitar, and what do you use them for in your set with the songs that you play in the bands you're in?
Sure. Well, and this is the age-old problem for me. I've never ever liked the sound of a single coil in the bridge. I try to. I love the way they look. I don't like the way a full-size humbucker looks back here, so I've gone back and forth. I have a storage shelf full of humbucker pick guards, 7 or 8 different pickups. I found that I really need some kind of humbucker as far as gain for my styles in the bridge, just to make things sound bigger and less ice picky. And then the single coils in the middle and the neck are stock. They're the Fender N3s, the noiseless. So I really never found the need to play with changing it to boutique pickups here. But this is a stock neck pickup. This is a stock middle, and this is a Seymour Duncan. I believe it's the Little 59 bridge, but it's supposed to sound like a full-size humbucker, not look like one. And most of the pictures I see, we play a gig and somebody takes snapshots. My hand is always right here anyway, so I don't know why I care what these look like, because unless I do this, which is only the very last song when I'm really doing the Arsenio Hall thing, nobody ever sees that pickup, so I shouldn't care what it looks like. And if they do not like the way it looks, I shouldn't care about that either. But in my mind, the neck pickup is really bluesy and Hendrixy. And this is going to be cliche stuff, but that's what I think of the neck pickup. The middle pickup, I could joke with one of my bandmates, Frank Krupit. Up until 2 years ago, I think I've never used it. I've always used this. I've used both of these together. I've used both of these together in the bridge, and I only started using this pretty recently. That sounds like a snappy, good bluesy lead pickup to me when you're playing things that have to sound sharper than the neck pickup. And then I like the bridge pickup, certainly for heavier chords. If I'm playing the gain channel on my Mesa Boogie, I really like the fact that it sounds very thick. Or if I'm doing, not that I can play like those people, but I can think of fusion sounds. like a good Steely Dan solo from Larry Carlton that might have a real violin type sound, not really heavy, but very soupy and sustaining. I think getting my amp to overdrive in that respect and have a lot of harmonics, I need a lot of gain back here. So that's what I'll do with the bridge pickup. And then on occasion, there might be some clean sounds that I might want to use this pickup for, where these two pickups sound too polite. But I'll mute these microphones because I can't forget to do that, or I'm going to wreck everything in this chain. It's so loud in here with this amp. But
just give us some, like, play a little bit in the style of that you would use each kind of configuration for when you do a gig.
I'll try my best to not get ourselves into copyright problems too.
Can you hear me anymore? Am I muted? You're muted, yeah.
Here's the neck pickup. Really warm, and I should probably mention before we play too many examples, when you're playing the electric, the closer you play to the neck is going to be bassier. This is going to be more balanced. This is going to be brighter. So just like acoustically, I'm not sure if that's coming across, but the neck pickup's going to be woolly, the middle pickup's going to be a little of each, and then the bridge pickup's going to be real stingy. So I'll do the middle pickup next. So maybe you could hear that this is a little bit less, maybe like a bass roll-off version of the neck pickup, not as meaty. And then the bridge pickup would be something like this. Wasn't a great example of what I mean to do on that pickup, but that's got a lot of the gain that these two pickups don't have.
So I wanted to share my findings because it might help somebody that's watching. I agree with what you're saying, but I have found a few things out. So when I play clean, I like to use that neck pickup for the, like you said, for the blue or edge of breakup for that kind of bluesy stuff, definitely. I really like the middle pickup for like that acoustic strumming type thing through a very clean sound. I think it gives me the most kind of acousticy sound, at least on my guitar. So I use that. And then here's the thing about the humbucker. Actually, my blues Strat that I have with the single coil in the bridge versus this humbucker one behind me, you see that's a humbucker, but you can't see it because it's black. That's actually a humbucker. So actually, no, is it? No, I'm wrong. That's single coil. My apologies.
I can't see from here.
My guitar that I have with the piezo has a humbucker, but they make it black so you can't really see. It's kind of like to make it more visually appealing. But the thing is, this is what I've found. I had the Illich system installed in that blue guitar, which is like a noise cancelling thing without using noise as pickups. And I think that makes it really usable because the problem with a Strat is, in case someone's buying one, when they're wired, so there's 5 positions, right? Position 5 is the neck, and then the next one, and there's noise. The next one is noiseless because the two cancel each other out, and then the middle one, which would be 3, has a little bit of noise, And then next one, which is 4, which is those two, has no noise. And then if you have a humbucker the humbucker is 1. The Fender say the humbucker is 1. If you have the humbucker in position 1, that's no noise anyway. So actually you've got 3 positions there that don't have any noise. So I was thinking the other day, I wouldn't bother putting something like the Illich in a guitar like that. But my guitar had noise on all positions, and then the Illich got rid of all the noise. And actually, when I used the single coil on that guitar, I can drive it pretty heavy. I'm pretty happy with it. You know, you can just use some EQ. You can use a boost pedal or an EQ to fatten it up. That's my problem with Strats. And then you can go down the noiseless pickup route like you have, or with the Ultra Stratocasters that just came out. But some people say they lose a bit too much top end. Although I didn't hear that on yours. Yours sounded good. I guess it's the way you set up the amp as well, right? All this stuff is... The EQ can fix a lot of these problems that might come up.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing. I want to point this out. Even noiseless pickups still have noise. Even humbuckers still have noise. People should realize that as well. And amps can add... Like tube amps can add some noise. But even noiseless pickups, they're not. It's bad marketing, really, because they're not noiseless, are they?
Yeah.
They're less noise. I would say it's like 50% less noise. There's still buzzing there when you have them on, definitely.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that because it took me a long time to figure all that stuff out. Like, which pickup do I use for each sound? What kind of pickups do I get? And I spent a lot of time figuring that stuff out. So I was thinking the other day, what would I do now? I'd either get an HSS like you've got there, but and get without the noiseless, but then just have noise on 2 positions, or I'd install something like the Illich, but that was like a $500 upgrade. I wouldn't do that again because if you sell the guitar, then you've wasted. You know, no one's going to pay that. When you sell something, you don't get paid for the upgrades you made to it. I've found. So, but if you have one guitar that you absolutely adore and you need it to be quiet, that is a great way to go. It works really, really well. But the whole noiseless thing, I don't know. And some people just put up with it. Some people say a Strat should have noise. It makes it more authentic.
Yeah,
so that's a whole video right there. But I think what you've done here is good for a gigging player. You've got the 2 noiseless pickups and the humbucker. So you've reduced the noise and you can turn it up at the gig. And remember, it depends on the room you're playing in because different lights can give different noise, right? It's like when I sit in front of my computer monitor here, I get quite a lot of noise. I have to turn the computer off, even with the noiseless. It can still add interference. And this apartment is quite noisy with the waves and things coming through. So it is probably worth a gigging musician having one like that. So that's cool. And then before I move on from the guitar, so you've added the roller. Is the roller nut an upgrade that you did?
That came with it. This came with the roller nut. It came with the compound radius neck, which I thought was very comfortable. The locking tuners.
Okay.
And it has the 2-point fulcrum tremolo that I thought stayed in tune really well. And it doesn't have that like do this and strip the whole thing out.
Yeah.
It's the push pull one.
Yeah, mine's push pull too, but it can be hard to pull it out. You have to really pull on it hard to get it out.
Yeah.
Tremolos for me have been a bit of a problem. They don't, they rarely stay in tune. I have to put brand new strings on, stretch them in, and then it will kind of stay in tune. But that's been a bit of a struggle for me. Like if you go really crazy on it, you're going to put the guitar out. Have you had any problems with that with your setup, or do you think that the things on that guitar remedy that, like the roller nut?
No, I unless I'm really being very careless with it, I can do a lot. And I really think the roller nut, maybe even more so than the lock and tuners. But then again, I don't do a whole lot of bending, so that the times that I do some of that, I'll just. I'm really.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything that would do. And it's funny because we're talking all the first few passages I did with what my pickups sound like. It's a little bit funny, and Aaron could appreciate this of working at a tone in your studio, working at it, and what you get live. I play rhythm 94% of the time. I'm only playing chords, maybe the occasional harmony fill. I'm lucky to be in a band with a crazy, crazy talented lead guitar player who, if I didn't play one guitar solo in the whole set, nobody would miss it. We don't need it. So I play probably, if we play 3.5 hours, I might play 3 or 4 solos. It's a little bit silly that I worry at all what my lead tone sounds like with my bridge pickup, because the times I don't go there more than 5 minutes at a gig. I really chose my amplifiers and my pedals on the sound like Aaron was talking about. I'm not sure why I went to lead examples, because what I do almost all the time is play this like an acoustic, and I do.
Right.
To piggyback off of your conversation, I actually live in the position between the middle and the bridge. That's where I do almost all my chord stuff. And if I get a good tone with that,
I used to use that for rhythm, and also on a regular Strat, that's often noiseless anyway. So that's why I want people to be careful. Don't rush out and install the Illich system in a Strat thinking you need every position to be noiseless, because if the reality is that you live on position 2, I always forget which one's which. 1 is the bridge. Position 2, which is where he is now, you're not going to get any noise on most Strats anyway. So just, you need to really get a guitar and try it out to see what you need. Of course, all guitars are wired differently. There's different wirings you can do. Again, that's a whole nother video. Like some of the tone controls are wired just for the bridge, and some control different pickups. So when you're trying a new electric, figure out what each control does and if it does what you want it to do. And to be honest with you, it took me years to really figure out what I want each thing to do. It's not something that, it's a bit like an acoustic, isn't it? What strings do you want? What pickup do you want? All this stuff is on electric is like times 10 because there's more controls and things like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's just go to the chat. Bob Dodson says, I play a 63 Strat and a vintage 97 Strat. 97's vintage? Should have kept my guitars. A Telecaster Thinline 96 and a Jerry Donahue Custom Telecaster, all through vintage Fender amps. Bob, you're my kind of guy. And that's actually what I was saying earlier. I could just use one great tone all night, like an acoustic. I don't need something like a Kemper with 1 million amps in it, because all I need is a great clean, a great crunch, and I need 3 sounds basically: clean, crunch, and heavy. And I've spent many years trying to get these digital things just to give me those 3 sounds. It's like, well, I can just get those 3 sounds from an amp. Now, if you're in a wedding band or a session player, you might want access to those things. That's fine, and they can sound really good direct. But that's where I'm at with the amps. Like, I only need 3 sounds. I just need a clean. I don't need 10 cleans. I need a heavy. I don't need 10 heavy. To me, and that'll sound really bad, but to me, a clean is a clean. And that's like that. Someone else would say, well, to me, an acoustic pickup is an acoustic pickup, and I'll say, no, it's not. Because that's my thing. But for me, with an amp, just the great, full-sounding, bright, sparkly clean is all I need. So, again, it's like all gear, it's what you need as a player to do your job. Kooky says, Keith is a big deluxe player, the Tweeds. Talking about the Stones. And David, me and David speak quite a lot about modelers, because he's been through them all like me. And he agrees with me about the amp in the room, but he gigs with modelers and profilers, because it is easy. Like, I've got the little HX stump, right? I can take that, run it through the PA. I can get through a gig. It's fine. It's really convenient. But like I said, I've actually been shocked lately. I've been playing the amps more, and I'm just shocked at how big they sound. Of course, I can't play them at full volume in an apartment. If you live in an apartment and you can't even turn the amp up, maybe it's not even worth owning an amp. If you live in a house, then you could own an amp and crank it up. That's great. So Maury can crank it up there in the basement. That's great. But that's something else to consider. Yes, I totally agree. My thing with digital is, if you use in-ears, it's great. Like in-ear monitors, it's going to sound the same as miking it, like we're hearing today. But the thing is, if you show up in a gig and you've got to amplify the modeler anyway, and take like two PA speakers to amplify it, well, why not just take an amp in the first place?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from now. It doesn't really save you any size. I'm the singer, so I take the vocal PA. That's why I wanted to take the modeler originally, because I didn't want to take the vocal PA and the amp. So I took a Helix just to have one thing to keep that rig. The car was already full of PA stuff. So that's why I did it. I thought, well, the PA is my guitar amp, isn't it? But I still like the idea now of just having an amp and miking it through the PA. It's like that. So I think it's worth.
I have a question for you, Aaron, before we get off that tangent. When you and I could probably agree that a good loud tube amp, when it's turned up enough, not so much, but enough, sounds the best. How many of your gigs allow you to turn it up where you want it to be?
Well, they don't. I mean, let's face it. We all get asked to turn down more often than we get asked to turn up. Actually, last week I did get asked. I played a gig the weekend and outside, and actually asked me to turn it up. That was nice. It was a nice change. Usually they say, "Can you turn it down?"
I'm asking because I play, like, it's a 50-50 split of outdoor concert things where I could be as loud as I want to be, and oftentimes I don't want to have an underpowered amp because it breaks up too soon.
Yes.
And then a week after that, we'll play in the corner of a restaurant where you have to have the tube amp turned down so far. I get so upset, and I remember that I played this restaurant last year with a little Mark 525 direct out into the Bose, and when you plug something direct into a Bose and it goes everywhere, it can be quieter, and it sounds like a recording. It doesn't sound like an amp. And I constantly spend Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday thinking, well, what should I bring? So I wondered if you went through the same problems.
Well, I guess I'm thinking I would like something like the JP2C head, because it's not too heavy, it's not too big, but it's 100 watts. Now, you're right. When will I get to use that at 100 watts? Now, 100 watts, in case people don't know, it does, a 100 watt amp versus a 20 watt amp doesn't mean it's like, my math is terrible, 5 times louder. But what it means is it won't break up as quickly. But you might want it to break up quickly because you might play blues and want that crank, dirty amp sound. But if you want crystal clean, you don't want it to break up too early. So that's why you get the 100 watter. But 100 watters are usually very heavy, very expensive. The JP2C is very expensive, but it's not too heavy, so it's usable. But that amp and many other amps have a switch, so you can switch between the two wattages as well. So that could work. Yeah. I would use pedals at that point. So I would use the pedals to add the distortion sounds like a tube screamer. So I would get around it that way. But you're absolutely right. Let's be honest here. You know, we're talking about tube amps. Like the first question to ask yourself if you're an acoustic player that wants to get into electric is, can I even turn this amp up where I live? You know, if I live in an apartment, I used to live in an apartment on the top floor, and the neighbor below me complained every time I used my amp because it was on the floor. So I've had amps in the past. They complained all the time, so I never used it. That's another reason I went to a Helix. So first of all, can you even use an amp? And at some bands use in-ears. They don't allow amps, so, and especially in a church and gigs like that. So remember, the first thing is, can you even have something loud? If you can have something loud, maybe you could get a 25 or a 35 watt amp and it'll be fine and it'll be lighter. The Synergy combo is like £40 and it's an amp and a speaker and 3 channels. That's great. That's why I got that for gigs. But it will break up pretty quickly. So something like the JP2C will allow me to have a really crystal clean sound at loud volumes. But then, like you said, am I even going to be able to use that at a gig? These are all the questions I'm currently asking myself. Yeah. In my dreams, yes, I'll show up to a band gig, we'll crank it up loud, and we'll play. And that's what I want to get back to. I don't know. And then I guess if they won't let you do that, that's when you run the direct out or just play quietly. I know that's a problem that musicians have had for all of time, right? Like, well, for the last 5 years, how do I play loud and not be asked to turn it down? Can you turn it down, please? I had a joke with Maury the other week off air because I had my first gig back after lockdown, and I thought, great, back to playing a gig again. It's at a country club. I'm outside, and I set up and I was playing, and then the manager of the club came over and said, well, can you just turn it down a bit? And my heart just sank. I was like, we've just had a lockdown. We've been through a global crisis, and that's the first gig back, and you're telling me to turn it down already. Yeah. So yeah, another great reason for owning something like a Kemper, right? Because you can plug it in, it can sound the same at any volume. It's all in one. It's not very heavy. Actually, mine is right here. They just released an iPad app, so you can make adjustments on the iPad while you're playing. It's great. It really is great. Cool. That's the downside of the tube amps, the whole volume thing. But I don't know. I don't want to play band gigs where I can't turn it up anyway. What's the point? It kind of doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. I just wouldn't take those gigs. But of course, I have no band gigs now anyway, so all this is not a problem. Okay, so I'm sure that's why David likes it too, and for the weight as well. But he also owns amps. My now old Tubemeister 38 has their red box out, and that sounds great through front of house. Yeah, some of the analog line-outs do sound great, especially if you add external EQ as well. Oh, Kooky doesn't agree. Many new tube amps have diode rectified power supplies with small transformers. Nothing to do with the tube rectified power supply that will actually sag. Now, I was saying this to a friend of mine the other day. The transformer in the amp makes a huge difference. It's not just the tubes. Okay, I take back what I said about the tubes being the answer. Maybe it's not the tubes, but I don't know. I'm not an I'm not an amp builder, Kooky, but whatever it is, all I found out from my testing is that the tube amp or whatever it is in that tube amp sounds much fuller, more 3D and thicker than a solid state power amp through a real cab. So it's not. I was trying to figure out what it was. I thought it was the guitar cab. It's not. It's like you said, it's the transformers, the tubes, all this stuff. And I'll never forget last year I was doing a band rehearsal. I was playing Helix direct to PA, and I walked over in the rehearsal room, maybe 2 years ago, I can't remember, but I walked over in the rehearsal room. They had a Fender Twin. Now that is a large box with 2 speakers in it and very powerful and about 100 pounds in weight. But I plugged into it and it just had this, I call it bloom now, Maury, like this, like 3D power, punch, roundness. And I just went to the drummer, wow, that sounds incredible. He said, yeah, because it's analog. I don't know why it sounds so good, but they can't recreate that with the digital stuff. So like I said, for live streaming, you probably wouldn't tell a difference. Actually, for live streaming, the Kemper might sound better, right? Because it's all set up, right, good to go, all been done by somebody on a profile, and you've just run it. But in the room, so Kooky, I do agree with you, and that brings us to the amp. So I know you used to sell Mesa amps. I presume that's why you have one, or did you have one before you sold them?
It's the other way around. I sold them because I loved them. I've been playing them since the mid-'90s. And then when we decided, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe longer than that, we should branch out and try some electric guitars and amplifiers. I only wanted to try something that I really believed in, same with Martin, so we got on with Mesa. We never did really well with them. For whatever reason, our store pairing up with Mesa Boogie didn't really work well. Nothing at all against the product. The product is amazing. We just weren't good at selling those things like we are with the Martin guitars, and I don't know. Some people actually think that we're so known for Martins it hurt us with Mesa Boogie, which I don't know how that would. I don't know why you'd be less likely to shop with us for a Mesa Boogie because we're so Martin. But for whatever reason, we just couldn't do well, and we decided not to renew a couple of years ago. So I've been connected to them a lot longer than I've just been selling them.
I always thought that. When I think of you, I think of Martin guitar. So I think that's just how it is. Maybe because I always knew you from selling Martins in the past. That wouldn't have stopped me from buying a Mesa amp from you, but that's what I feel you're most known for.
Well, it stopped everyone else, so we couldn't keep selling them.
And now,
no hard feelings whatsoever, but we just couldn't do it.
And now I'm disappointed because we could do Mesa Boogie Wednesdays, and I would love to do Mesa Boogie amps with you. I love it. But of course, that's no longer possible. But anyway, let's talk about the amp. What is the amp, and how powerful is it, and what does it weigh, and why do you play that amp and not another one?
It weighs 150,000 pounds. I know that. And the joke is it's on wheels. So I've often brought different amplifiers to gigs from time to time that were a little bit lighter but no wheels, and I recognize, well, wait a minute, I can push 95 pounds a lot easier than I can carry 70. So it's 100 watts. It can be selectable down to 50. It's the original version of Lone Star Classic. A couple years after they came out with it, then they gave you a version that went from 100 watts down to 50, down to 10. This amplifier precedes that version, so it's the original. They call it the Big Blue Pig on some of the forums. So it's 2 channels. Channel 1 and channel 2 can sound identical if you want them to, or channel 2 can be, you can engage a drive circuit, which sounds a little bit more like a Mark I. It's not high gain, but it's definitely got a lot more like Texas-y. If you look at some older ad copy, they're kind of pushing the Stevie Ray Vaughan vibe and the bluesy, heavier blues vibe. So to me it sounds like channel 1 is a Fender Twin with, I think, better trebles, because some of the Fender stuff that I played when I bought this were a little bit ice picky to me, and that doesn't mean you can't get around that, but just without doing some careful EQ, if I played Fender and played this one, this sounded like a more complex top end on the first channel, and that's where I do 95% of what I play. So channel 1 is really where I live for like a glassy clean, a little bit of breakup sometimes, but not a lot. And then channel 2 is the really overdriven sounds that I use, and it also has something that was pretty brand new about 15 years ago or so, the solo circuit. It's foot switchable after the output stage. There's a solo boost. You could dial it as much as you want, so it doesn't influence what goes and hits the front of the amp, but whatever sounds you have, whatever you're playing, you can hit the solo button and just get a clean boost after the power stage, and it really, for times we don't have a sound man, it really solves any problems from needing a boost pedal. And a boost pedal, unless you do it in the loop, and I'm sorry to get geeky on this, but unless you have a boost pedal after the gain stage, the initial front end of the amp, if you put a boost in front of your amp and you're already getting overdriven sounds, it's going to make the amplifier overdrive more. It's not going to make it louder. But these solo switches on the Mesa Boogies just gives you a solo, so it's really, really handy.
Well, that's another thing I wanted to mention with these amps. This is something that I'm dealing with now. So a lot of people now just buy a single channel amp and they just run it clean, and they use pedals in front of it to change the sound. I did that in the past with an amp. So that's great because you can just have a pedal board and everything just hits that clean amp. It's like running into a PA or something. So you haven't got to deal with effects sends and what they call 4-cable method and running all these different wires. But people like to use the built-in amp distortion channel because they say it sounds better or different or whatever. So that's the only thing with that. Using the 2 channels does mean you have to use more cabling. It's a bit more complicated. I can see why people just use a clean amp and run pedals into it. I like John Mayer does that, and people like that do that. So why do... I guess, am I right then? You feel that the drive from the amp is better than just running a pedal into the clean channel?
I do, enough so that I've taken measures to buy something called Pedal Snake, which sort of alleviates the problem. And not to get into that for 45 minutes, but I have a solution where the pedal board, it's a rat's nest under the pedal board, but it's hidden, and it goes out one big cable to the back of the amplifier where I plug in the effects loop and the power, and then the front of the amp gets the foot switch cable, and it's really nice. It's a cable about that thick, and it carries everything. So I do have to have my effects send, return, and power run from the amplifier back to the pedal board, but it's not messy the way I do it. But I find it's worth it because I get to put a high quality delay and a foot switchable volume control in the loop. So from my pedal board, I can add delay effects and time-based effects like that in the loop, because if you would put that in front of the distortion, it wouldn't sound right. So the kind of things like chorus, maybe not chorus, but delay and reverb, I think you want to have them in the effects loop after the gain. And doing it this way, that really does allow me to do it. But yeah, there's that amp is so it's so big and heavy and bulky and not efficient, and it's none of the things Aaron brags about helixes and pedals, and it's like a piece of furniture. Part of the reason it sounds so good, it's a 212 sized cabinet with 112 in it. So when they built this amp,
I didn't realize that.
You can buy
so it's two. It's 2 speakers.
Well, it fits 2 speakers. You could go back and buy this in a 112 or a 212, but when you buy the 112, it's not any smaller.
So what is this? A 212?
This is a 112.
112. Okay. So in case people don't know, a 212, like that Fender Twin, is 2 12-inch speakers. This is 1 12-inch speaker. But to further my point at the start of the show, when I said that some of the newer lightweight options don't sound as good, look at this thing. You can see it on the screen now. It's big and it's high quality wood and it's heavy. What that means is you get a bit like an acoustic guitar. You just get a better sound. You get a more resonant sound in a little plastic box. That's going to make a difference. And Kooky just said that too. Not all tube amps are made equal. Even the wood furniture counts. He means the wood of the enclosure, because like Kemper just released the Kemper cabinet, which is their way of doing amp in the room. But the thing is, it's such a small, lightweight, thin box that it's not going to have that. That could be one of the reasons why it doesn't sound so full. It doesn't have that big cabinet. It's got to make a difference, hasn't it? It also means it weighs a lot. So you've got wheels on there. It's really heavy. I don't know if I've always wanted one of these amps. I don't know if I'd want it at that. I don't know if I could. I don't know how you do it, is what I'm trying to say. That amp weighs about 90 pounds. I don't think I could even lift that off the truck. I'm lucky because when you own a music store, the way things work here, I can pull that out of a van and only get it off the ground about this far, roll it right where it's going to be parked for 13 months in this case. Right.
But going to a gig, I can unload my van, put it in a room right inside the front door, and I don't have to carry anything more than 10 feet till it's in the car. And then at the gig, yeah, sometimes that sucks. Even if you get there even if everybody in the band shows up when you do, which is almost never happens, and you get helpers, they're carrying stuff too. So it's not like you have 4 people in the band and only your car. You're sometimes hauling that up steps just is awful.
Yeah,
I brought it downstairs to do this, and I'm cursing you all the way down these steps, thinking I got to bring these back upstairs then for Thursday. I'm playing, and I'm gonna Aaron short.
But you curse me every day anyway, so it's the same.
That's true.
The thing is, once you get that on stage, you've got more than enough headroom, more than enough volume. I bet it sounds and feels incredible. I never liked that whole thing on the internet about, the feel of something. Does the Helix feel like I don't really get it. But I think the feel for me comes from having that thing behind me. And the feel I get is like they say he's pushing air. I get the feel of the actual amp. The amp is almost like another instrument. It's like it's that's when I think when people say feel, they mean the feel of playing the guitar. I'm not good enough to get that, but what I get is a sense of the room kind of being alive. Like I said, the amp is kind of blooming in the room. I never get that from a PA speaker and a modeler. So that's why. So I'm sure at that point it's worth it. But it is very heavy. And I was never one to use like amp heads and separate cabinets, but I think that's a good way to go for a lot of people. If you want to get, like I keep talking about the JP2C, it's 100 watts like yours, but it's 40 pounds. So what you do is you take the head in, and then you take a cab in, which is also 40 pounds, and then you've got the same rig, but in 2 halves. You're taking in 40 pounds and 40 pounds, and not 90 pounds all at once. So I think that's why the head is a good way forward. Would you ever consider, let's say you didn't have this amp today, would you consider using a head and a cab or not?
I would. As a matter of fact, I often, when I was in a band maybe 5 years ago with these guys that we played all the time and we practiced every Monday, I could have brought my head to that rehearsal room and have a cabinet there, and then have a cabinet at home or a cabinet in the band trailer. And you can only, just bring the head, knowing that the 2 places you're always going to be on stage and at rehearsal, there might be 2 cabinets, and you can kind of save from bringing the cabinets anywhere. But yeah, right before we stopped doing Mesa, I actually got a quote from my rep to take my Lone Star that you're looking at now, take the head out of the chassis and make it into a head shell, and then buy like a little 112 Thiel. And what you just said stopped me. I thought about it all week long, and then I go to a gig with this, and I thought, I'm going to miss that cabinet. If I put the guts of this amp on top of a 112 speaker, I'm going to remember what this sounded like, and I'm probably going to miss it.
Yeah, that's one thing I commend you for. You have the same Martin, you have the same amp, you've got stuff that works for you, and you stick with it. And I've been the opposite to you. I've just tried everything, and I'm really glad I have, because I've been on that journey, and I can make a YouTube channel about it. But now I want to be more like you now. I just want like some stuff that I just kind of swear by. I think that's a great place to be. I think that's a good way to be. Would you ever consider, let's go back to that scenario, the amp disappears for whatever reason. I know it's a very negative thing to say, but okay, the amp is gone. What would you do now? I wonder what you do. Okay, I'm taking the amp away. Would you consider going digital, or what? Would you just go and get another Mesa? What would you do?
Oh, I would entirely consider it. And it's funny, some of this is going to get a little bit off topic, and I apologize to the chat, but it's about live streaming. Aaron and I have been really good about putting a lot of effort into Mondays, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're emailing and texting, and how do we get this better? When you and I had some struggles about 6 months ago with live streaming and getting sound, that took such a long time to get this sound figured out. I was looking at a lot of stuff with MainStage, was one of the Apple products. I'm one of those people, once you get me off stage and you give me a couple of days to surf on the internet, I can be convinced very quickly. I think I want to try modeling now, because I could picture myself finding MainStage sounds, or I'd have to call you to ask you if it's Helix or what brand it would be, and get 5 or 6 really core tones, not 100, maybe even 3, and then figure out how to get them into my Bose. I wouldn't necessarily need a tube power amp, and to get snotty about that, maybe that would be down the road. I would feel that way. I think I would probably try to find a Mesa Boogie Mark 525, a little 25 watt head, or explore MainStage or some kind of a laptop based thing, where if I'm not going to have the amp that I wanted, maybe would be honest, and I probably would just buy that amp again, if that's one of the answers I'm allowed to say. I would definitely try modeling first, because I know I could get myself really upside down about modeling and get chaotic and get upset, and always come right back to a Mesa Boogie amp with no effort, and realize that plan C can just be buy another Mesa Boogie 2-channel amp, and there'd be no heartache at all there. So I would try modeling first.
I think people should try it, and I know a lot of people like it, you know. And if you, like I keep saying, if you plug in direct a lot, that is a great way to go. I think for people like you that are using an amp now and happy, it's good to get something like the HX Stomp, because you can try the models in there, there's a few gigs to see, and you can also then put it on your pedal board and use it for delays and reverbs and pitch shifting and stuff like that. It works really well for that stuff. So I think it's good. A lot of people are doing hybrid setups now. So you have an HX Stomp, then you have some analog drives, and you run it into a tube amp that's not too heavy. That's a great way to go to kind of compromise. And then you can always go direct if you need to, or just pull it off the board and run to a rehearsal. So I'm still thinking like that as well. I wouldn't take a 100-watt head to a rehearsal room. I would want something else to take to that, or plug into whatever amp they have, maybe. But yeah, the thing is now, I always make this joke at NAMM, or it's not even a joke really. You walk around the NAMM show, there's like a million ways to amplify an electric guitar. Modelers, I mean, there's a million modelers, and then there's a million amps, and a million.
Right.
And now there's apps. Some of the apps on the phone are really good. There's an app called THU, and if you have a way of plugging into your phone with a little foot controller, that sounds kind of Kemperish to me. It's really good.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, I'm old school, and I don't really want to use my phone at a gig. I want to say this. There's also, a bit like with the Martin guitars and things like that, there's also an emotional connection for me. Like having a Fender Strat through a real tube amp, just even mentally, is a cool feeling. You know, do you know what I mean? Even knowing that I'm using like a replication of something, for me, kind of it's not as good. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very much like that. It's like my Yamaha Red Label is an amazing guitar, but I just can't find a connection with Yamaha yet as a brand myself.
Yeah.
But it's one of the best guitars I have, and I'd recommend it to anyone. I love it. The pickup's great, the guitar's great, but I don't have that emotional connection with it. And it's the same with the digital stuff. I'm not saying I don't, but a real amp has character and history, and I think there's something to be said for that. Some people might not agree with me at all, but I just think there's something really cool about an old Strat and a Fender Twin and plugging in, and there's something real there, you know.
Well, you don't see any like really old stories about Buddy Holly and like Helix. It's all the things like where these things came from are attached to so many super positive, not role models, but like if I'm thinking like you're thinking, like the connection of I think of Strat, I think of Clapton, I think of like these albums and these times, and you don't think of main stage or anything. So yeah, it's probably that.
If Hendrix was alive now, would he play a Kemper or a real amp? Actually, that's, when you look at most touring bands now, and I'm not trying to like prove any points or win any competitions here, but when you do look at actually, I'm going to get told off because a lot of touring bands, I think Metallica use Kemper. Okay, whatever, I'm wrong. But a lot of touring bands still use, it's not like everyone just threw their amps away and went to digital. And for me, there's just still pros and cons for each. You know what? I said on Thursday's show, I wish they would. I wish a little box this big would have that feel of that amp in the room. I would switch. I know I said I've just contradicted myself about the emotional connection, but if it sounded better than a real amp, I would switch. I wouldn't even think about it. But for me, it doesn't.
Then you have a hybrid story, and not to take it off the rails, but Little River Band came to Jim Thorpe about 10 years ago, and they didn't want a lot of sound on stage, but I guess it must not have been really time for Kempers yet, and they were doing in-ears, but they weren't totally done with tube amps. And friends of mine that I play with opened up for them, and they were backstage. And on stage, they have whatever regular rigs they have, rhythm stuff. But the lead guitar player, so he wouldn't tear anybody's head off in the front row, they had an amplifier backstage, a Marshall 412, just a speaker, aimed back at the trucks at the loading dock. And then every once in a great while, you're backstage, and they said the story was you're chatting around drinking coffee, whatever they were doing. And every once in a great while, if a guitar solo happened, this sort of quiet backstage would be just this crazy loud 412 cabinet came on, and all you heard was this guy's guitar solo, turned up as hard as it had to be. Only people that would be knocked over will be dummies backstage talking near it. And he said it was just the loudest thing you've ever heard. But on stage, it solved the sound problem.
Yeah, yeah. And some people do that just to have the vibrations through the floor as well. Hi, Brad. Sandy liked the electric playing.
Thank you.
Dr. McFarland has a Reverend Gil Paris signature. Let's just quickly touch on that as well. You used to sell Reverend guitars, right? So
We did.
do you no longer sell any electric guitar equipment?
That is correct. But we're phasing them out. But my second guitar, I don't want to make anybody sad putting the Fender away. But since Dr. McFarland said it, my other guitar is a Reverend Sensei LE.
That's nice.
Thank you.
Just
I
give
love
us
the
a
Reverends,
give us a quick rundown, because I've got a few friends that know and like Reverend, but a lot of people don't even know who they are. Can you just give us like a quick elevator pitch about what Reverend is?
Absolutely. It's still really, really good stuff. It's built, I believe, it's offshore, and then they come into Toledo, Ohio, and they get inspected really, really well by a bunch of really good guys. Fender locking tuners. There's no roller nut here, but it's a Bigsby trim on this model. Joe Naylor is the guy that designs them, and then Ken and Penny Haas own the company. But the guy that basically brought these to life is still involved, still on board as the designer. They make their own pickups, Naylor pickups, and this is a short scale Gibson-y, instrument, and then they make some long scale instruments as well. They look really retro, but they're very modern feeling. They have their claim to fame is a bass contour switch on almost all of them, so you can actually you have a master volume, master tone, but then a bass roll off instead of just rolling back your volume. So that's kind of where they came around to being famous for, and they're really, really playable. Again, we don't sell these anymore except for maybe a couple. I think we have a Shade Balderos signature model and a Reeves Gabrils dirt bike. So we're down to our last two Reverends, but they really, whether or not you're looking at those two models or anything new from that company, they really are worth looking at.
Vic G says, generally I agree with you, Aaron, on the tube versus modelers argument, but Fender's Tone Master amps are really close, enough for me to consider one. I want to try one. Fender Tone Master, what they did last year at NAMM or the year before is they made a solid state amp that basically just looked like a Fender Twin but weighed half the weight. It's solid state. I would love to get one and take it to that rehearsal room and compare them. And I'm just a bit concerned because I've heard people say it still sounds solid state. It still doesn't distort and turn up as well as a tube amp does. But I would love to do that one day just to see. Because what they've done with that is they've put all the DSP into just the reverb and the IRs. It doesn't do anything else. It's recreating the old amp, but a new amp which is half the weight with a direct out with IRs. So all the DSP is just on that reverb, just to make it sound as good as it possibly can. I would love to compare that to the real thing one day. That would be a great video as well. But I've heard, and I don't like to go by what people say on the internet because our opinions are all different. That's why I have my own channel. But I've heard that they're still not quite up there with the tubes and the transformers, whatever. But it does mean you can have a Fender Twin at half the weight. Like you can actually pick it up with one finger, which is great, right? And no, they do that on the videos. But the great thing with that is it looks like a Twin. So when you turn around and look at it on stage, you have that emotional connection because it's a Fender Twin.
Yeah.
And no one in the audience knows that it's a copy of the Twin. I don't know. I'd have to try it. I'd have to try it. But that's another way you can go. Like, it's another route you can go. It's crazy. So, Vic, that's cool. Brad's here. Hi, Brad. I have a Telecaster copy. Purple. Nice. Purple's in right now. Oh, Lee's here. Hi, Lee. We're thinking of you. Hi, guys. Quick hello. Busy tonight. Big thanks to Maury. Much appreciated. Did you send him an OM42?
Hang in there. I sent them an OM24 here.
Poo Ninja, throw some thumbs up. Yes, please do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thomas Moore, Aaron, what do you plug your Fender Acoustasonic into to get a thicker sound, and what strings do you use? That's 11s that comes with it. If you want to see what that sounds like, check out my concert from yesterday. And I just plugged it straight in, but you can run it through stuff. You know, this kind of goes along with my argument. Like, this is a hybrid, so I don't feel like the electric that comes out of this is one-to-one with an electric guitar. I don't feel like the acoustic sounds that come out sound like Maury's microphone on a Monday with the Martin guitars. But what it gives me is something different. It gives me the ability to switch between the two. So that's why I like digital, when it allows me to do something that I couldn't usually do. right? Like with the TC Helicon, I can add the vocal harmonies. I couldn't do that without another singer. With this, I can switch between electric and acoustic sounds. I couldn't do that without switching guitars. So I like the digital stuff for that, when it gives you the uniqueness, something new, something different. That's why I like the digital for. All right, I want to go.
What do you plug it into?
It has modeling built in. That's what I'm saying. This has like an amp model built in, so the pickup is a real pickup, but it goes through a modeling of like a Fender Twin, and then when you put it on and plug it straight into PA, you hear that kind of sound, modeled sound. But my point is that same thing at a gig, that into the PA would not sound like a Fender Twin behind me with a real Strat, but it gives me a sound that I would never have from an acoustic. So I like when the digital stuff does stuff that the analog cannot do. I feel like a lot of the modelers are just simply trying to sound like the real thing these days. Like, we sound just like the real thing. I want digital to do stuff that the analog gear cannot do. Right? There's no acoustic guitar that can sound like an electric, but this guitar can sound like an electric. I like stuff like that, and we're seeing less and less of it these days. I hope we see more stuff like that. Hi Stephen, good to see you here. Brad has a Strat copy. One day I might get the real thing. Yes, you should do. Electrics rule. Yes, I agree. Thumbs up needed. Thank you for the support, everyone. Rosalind, hi, everyone in the chat. Jeff Beck Jr. in the bridge is a beast. Yeah, I haven't ever played a Reverend. Oh, I played one. I have to play some more. After decades of chasing the ideal expensive Strat and tellies, I settled in on a cheap featherweight bodies I finish in thin paint, quality pickups, and all parts necks with rolled edges and fret level. Yeah, I do like a light guitar. Is your Strat light, Maury? Because some Strats are quite heavy.
I don't think it's heavy, but it's probably not the lightest. I would say it's probably in between somewhere.
David says he totally agrees with you about having a humbucker at the bridge. I do too, for what I play. I've just found that, for me, the biggest problem with the single coil in the bridge is the noise. Because what I do is I add the distortion on that pickup and do the chuggy stuff. And that's when you get all that noise. It's crazy. But I've just found with the Illich system, the fact that it kills the noise, if I just hit that pickup with a tube screamer into a dirty channel of an amp, it gets pretty close, and in some ways I prefer it. My friend used to say Hendrix never had a humbucker, which is true, and in some ways I prefer it because the single coil has more of a kind of piercing sound. It can kind of cut through, whereas some humbuckers can be kind of a little bit more woolly sounding, and you have to run them through a drive pedal anyway. So I think the biggest problem for me with the humbucker in the bridge is simply the noise when you don't have noiseless. I think you're going to disagree with me because you said you have to use a humbucker on your guitars. But for me, personally, I think you can use a single coil, but the problem is the noise is unbearable, and that's why the humbucker is good, because it kills the noise and it fattens the sound before you hit the amp, right?
Here's what I mean, though. When I could play a single coil on the bridge in my amp, but I've got to take so many things set up differently EQ-wise that then my other pickups are unusable. I just can't go to a gig and use all three pickups. Even turning the tone control down on the pickup, it helps, but not. Then I play this through the lead channel and it just sounds just huge, and it's just a personal taste.
I want to touch on that. That's something that I've really struggled with. If I set the clean channel of an amp nice and bright for the neck pickup, and then I use that as a pedal platform. If there's one channel and I set that for bright clean, if I then hit it with a drive for the heavy stuff, it's way too bright and I have to take all the tone off. That's the reason why I like the 3-channel amp. So the Synergy here has the ability to have the 3 channels. So the clean can be a bright, sparkly clean. The other two on this amp are shared EQ, but at least I can have more gain on the third one and have that gain set roughly correct for those sounds. With a 3-channel amp like the JP head, you can actually have each channel for each sound and individual EQs. And I think that's really useful. That's another reason why I like the modelers, because you can have a different amp for each sound. Yeah. The Kemper is great. You can actually have 5 amps and switch between them seamlessly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
different
that is
amp for every song.
And in one performance. So in one performance, basically your pedal board, you have 5 amps. So you have super clean, slight dirty clean, Edge of Breakup, Heavy, and Steve Lukather. You have like all those sounds. So that is really great, and you can't do that on the other pedals. The Kemper is actually, I think you'd like the Kemper more. You should probably check one out one day.
And that's what I'll do all the time when I have free time, and then I'll go to the gig and I'll play the one sound for almost every song.
Right. Well, when it comes down to it, I play one sound. Now, what I want to do is, in fact, what I like doing sometimes is just plugging straight into the amp with no pedals and just playing that one sound with the amp and the reverb in the amp. Does the Lone Star have a built-in reverb?
Yes.
Okay, so that's cool. So let's go over now and look at the pedal board that you use, because it looks interesting, and I had no idea what any of these are, apart from the tone press. I'll put it on the screen. Hang on. Hopefully it won't crash Ecamm Live when I do it, because I get the beach ball every time. Okay, I've covered this up. That's fine, though. So, I'm just looking at this. First of all, you better get the vacuum cleaner out. I see many cat hairs on there. Tell us, can we start with what's first in the chain and go from there, and just tell us what each pedal does, please?
Sure, and that board doesn't have to be that big, but I'm not one of those people that buy a new pedal board every time I change my mind, because I would have 20 of them.
That's annoying.
First in the chain is a tuner on the top right. It's the I think it's called Pitch Black from Korg. Nothing special. It just has a small footprint and it's easy to see. I go out of that and I go out of that to the left, which is the tone press. That's a Barber product, and it's a parallel compressor, and it's really nice because if you leave the blend set in the middle, your signal is 50% uncompressed sound and 50% compressed, so it doesn't have that squash. If you turn that dial all the way to the right, it would act like a regular compressor, but leaving it at the halfway point lets you still have the initial attack of not using compression, and as soon as the initial attack sneaks through, then you get compression. So it sounds like a studio trick where you would double track guitars and only compress one channel. That you can get that with that pedal. I have that set, if I'm doing it right, to unity gain, so when I use that pedal it doesn't add any volume or it doesn't hit the amp any harder. I go out of that into a Boss tremolo
One
pedal.
second, is that on all the time, or is it turned on for certain songs or effects?
The way I said that made it sound like it's only on for certain songs. I use that almost the whole time. I'll take it off every once in a while, but if I think I want to have it off and I forget and I don't notice it, then I just sort of tell myself just leave it on. So it's probably almost always on.
Okay, cool.
Tremolo pedal is a Boss, just again because it was easy to find and it was the right footprint. I spent quite a few weeks trying to find a really good boutique version of that, but it wouldn't fit, and I just thought, well, I'm going to use that for 7 or 8 songs, so I'm not going to sweat over that, and it works fine.
Okay.
Maybe people in the chat would know, but I've seen people talk about a mod. Is it a Keeley mod that allows you to get better volume out of that? No, I never did that, but I thought of it. Then I go into the Barber LTD, which is a really, really low overdrive. The way I have it set in the picture is at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, and that still almost sounds clean. You got to turn that all the way up to get any kind of real overdrive out of it, but to me it sounds like when I'm not using it, it's crystal clean, and when I turn it on, it can be as subtle as just having a little bit more girth, and not even, you almost have to play 3 notes at a time to make it sound like it's distortion or overdrive. Very, very subtle. I like that instead of having a full-on overdrive pedal that you have to have it set to 1 or anything like that. It's a very usable sweep. I have that set a little bit louder than unity gain because a lot of times I'll do real clean almost the whole time, and then if I want to do a really small solo part, or if we're playing an Allman Brothers song and I'm going to play the bottom harmony to what Tim's doing, I don't sound clean anymore, but I don't sound mushy or certainly not high gain. It's sort of just you're in between sound, but it's err on the side of being clean. And then to the left of that is my Mesa foot switch, so there's no signal chain going there, but that allows me to switch both from the channels and the solo. So the left button is the channel switch, and the second button on the right is the solo switch. And after the LTD, it goes under the pedal board and out the snake, back to the effects loop of the amplifier. That comes back into the bottom left-hand corner is the TC Electronics Nova repeater, which is just a delay. And I have that set to a dotted eighth note, so if you turn that up to really be usable, you get that stuff like the Edge from U2 or Run Like Hell from Pink Floyd.
For those
But I
U2
have
covers, right? Streets
I
have no
have
name.
I have that set almost as a reverb, where you can't really tell it's a delay unless I would stop playing, but it definitely fills up my sound a lot and sounds more studio to me. And I was really thrilled to find that last thing on the pedal board is the
Yeah,
top,
what is that?
Top left. It's called the EWS. It's I think they call it a subtle volume control, and it's something the design you can actually turn it with your foot.
Oh,
And if you see the blue tape there,
that's great.
This is really getting geeky, maybe even for Aaron standards. When I'm playing my Strat, I have that volume set to the 1 o'clock line, because my Strat sounds like it's, when I'm playing my Strat, my amplifier is that loud.
Yeah.
If I'm playing my Sensei from Reverend, and it's a gainier instrument, I'll actually turn it back to the I guess it's like 11 o'clock, so that the output volume of my amp is exactly the same now, but the front of my amp is getting hit harder with humbuckers, and that makes up for the volume. So I can turn that all the way to the left, and I'd be muted. If I ever want to be louder than the 1 o'clock, I could, turn it up, and it's like turning your amp up without going back to your amplifier and somebody seeing that you turned your amp up, which is pretty cool too. But that's really it. It's not much more than just a little bit of compression, tremolo, and then I have my in-between overdrive and my full-on overdrive with delay and tuner.
So that's what I was saying. You basically have the two channels of the amp with some dressing, right? Basically, you don't have anything radical here. Let me just talk through each effect, and I've got some questions, and I'll just tell you what I would do. So we always put the tuner first, so it picks up that note and tunes well. That's cool. I use the Peterson strobe tuner, but it's basically similar. That then goes into the sustain. Now the compressor. I don't use a compressor very much. I feel like I should do, because if you use it in a little subtle way, it can really thicken the tone. So I might get one and leave it on all the time as well. Something I need to explore more. And then so your tremolo is going in the front of the amp, right? Not the effects loop.
Exactly, yep.
Okay, so the effects can go before. I think I would normally put one after the effects loop, but they can go in front as well. In fact, all these can go in front if you want to. That's a lot of it is personal preference. Then that barber is basically another drive pedal or a boost pedal, right? To push the amp a bit more.
It's a drive pedal in the wimpiest way. It's really,
Okay.
really low. Yep.
Okay, so I have a tube screamer that does basically the same thing. So basically that is going in the front of the amp. The only thing going in the after the effects loop is the Nova repeater, the delay pedal, right?
And the volume control, yep.
And the volume, right. And that volume is basically doing what your solo boost is doing on the amp. So here's my thought, and this is what I've been thinking with my amp. I like the analog compressor, and I like the analog drives, but that TC pedal could be an HX Stomp, because it's a digital pedal, and the HX Stomp is a digital pedal, but it does a lot more stuff. So I'm thinking about having the HX Stomp where that is, to do all those other things and be a backup with the or the HX effects, but either. And then I would still have the analog drives like the Tube Screamer, the compressor, and my tuner that I love in the front. So I actually would do something very similar to what you've done here, but with a bit more versatility maybe, or also more complication, of course. But you see what I mean, right? That TC pedal could be an HX Stomp, which then gives you all the reverbs, all the delays, and even a tuner and all the other stuff as well. So
Oh, wow.
we actually have a similar approach here, and you've got the 2-channel amp, but I'm thinking about the 3-channel amp with the Synergy. So yeah, you've actually gone a similar way, and that I love the pedal at the top left. That could just be a volume pedal, right? A mini volume pedal would do the same thing, but I like the fact it's a small footprint, takes up less space than the volume pedal. So I would probably get one of those as well and use it. I love the way you can use your foot on pedals like that. It's really cool. So. I was just thinking though, why do you not have like a mini wah? Why do you not have a flanger, or you just don't use effects like that?
And I don't know that I have a hatred for them, or that I just wouldn't like them, but I haven't found myself going home from a weekend full of gigs thinking that's what's missing. I don't know. I used to have a wah, years ago, and I probably didn't use it enough. And man, is it really selfish to say, if I'm not going to use it for more than a couple songs, I'll leave it home. Like that's so dumb, but that must be what I did. And again, I'm the rhythm guitar player, and to bring this whole thing back to what we've done last episode backwards, you got to remember, this is going to sound even funnier. All this I'm putting towards, like, how can I make my treble pickup sound better, and what can I do with these pedals? I play acoustic more than half the time at these gigs. So when I bring this Thursday
Oh,
to
I didn't
Penn
know that. So you play
yeah.
Martin there as well.
I do. I'm gonna talk so
Oh.
much about all this, and we're gonna play from 6 to 9:30. No, 6:30 to 9.
Oh,
okay?
I didn't know
And
that. Okay.
Aaron, more than half of the time, I'm gonna be playing the Martin. So,
Okay. I didn't know that. But you still have a very similar approach to what I would want. And of course, there's players out there that would have more effects, bigger boards, digital solutions. But I do think it's interesting that me and you have a similar approach. And I haven't asked you about this before. I mean, I have done, to be completely transparent. But the thoughts I've come to have actually been quite, it's been quite, what's the word? It's a coincidence, I think. This whole thing of the 3-channel amp with the individual control channels and the real drive from the amp. This whole thing of using analog drives and wah and the tuner of your choice, not the one that they throw into the pedal in front of the amp, and then using, because delays and reverbs are often digital anyway, so throw those in the effects loop and use those from a stomp, or even get some fancy ones if you want to do it like that. You've actually got a pretty similar rig there, and I like that because it confirms what I said at the start of the show of these digital things are great. It's great to have all these options in them, but essentially we just want a great bass tone and some effects of our choice to sprinkle in. And I think it's good. The plus of what you've got there is you're not going to fiddle. You're not going to download presets and update firmware and connect it to your Wi-Fi. You're just going to sit and play the guitar. Yeah. And I love that about the amps. But I'm not knocking digital. I'm still going to cover it on my channel, and I still think it's impressive and it's a fun thing to follow. But I also think that this approach you've got there is just great. You can't go. It's just classic. You can't go wrong with it. Is the board actually plugged in? Can you just play us Can you just show us what the pedals sound like?
Yeah, sure.
I just resized everything. There we go.
So let me see. I'll try to turn it down so I can talk while we're doing it.
Yeah.
Let us know at home if this is way too loud, because I'm going to bring the volume really so low that I won't enjoy it, but you can hear me talk.
Yeah, that's fine.
So this is the delay. So if I'm going to tap tempo something like this, it's almost not even there.
Really subtle, yeah. Yeah, I hear it.
So if this is off, no delay, and then on, just for filling things up. Then I'll take that off to make this part easier. That's my clean sound. If I put that really, really small amount of dirt here, so clean would have been like this, and then just this much dirt. That's that dirt.
Go on, Keith.
Yeah, I tried to stop before I got too far. And then I do like the tremolo a lot.
Oh, nice. So we're getting some bleed from the strings and the mic, and the audio quality today isn't exactly high fidelity, but I can still tell that tone is good. It's raw and it's fat and it's full. I bet in the room it sounds incredible, right? I bet it sounds great in the room. Here, yeah. I can just tell. Now I wanted to say this for people. I mean, pedal boards again is a huge topic. Delay pedals don't always have tap. I feel like it's essential. Do you agree? And do you have that delay pedal on most of the time, or just certain songs?
I have that on. The only time I take that off is if it's a really, really blues thing that almost sounds like out of place. If we're doing a something that just sounds like that's too hi-fi, I'll turn it off twice a night maybe.
I've actually since we've been doing the streams, I've been putting more delay on my voice and my acoustic guitar, and I'm really liking it now. I wasn't using enough effects in the past, so that's something else that I would do as well. Yeah. So again, just to tie this together, then can you just play us, like, let's say you're singing and you're just basically playing rhythm in what would essentially be like Brown Eyed Girl or something. You're not playing acoustic, you're playing that kind of acoustic rhythm. What pickup are you using, and what effects do you have on, and which channel are you on?
Definitely channel 1.
Okay.
I would use the, we're going to call it position 2, is it? Bridge and middle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have the delay on tap tempo, and it would sound like this.
I think also we're both acoustic players that sing, so we also have, I think we're coming from an acoustic background. Am I right that it's kind of a similar thing? Like we both just want that kind of almost acoustic big sound,
yes.
and we sing over it, and we just want to play a solo. And if I take a solo, it's quite nice with something like the HX Effects, because you could program it so when it does the solo boost, which is just a volume boost, it could also add more. It could also turn up the delay and the reverb. So stuff like that.
That's cool. Yeah.
That's when it's good. When you have the HX Effects, and for example, it will change the channel of the amp, and also then apply like an EQ or a different reverb to that channel. That's cool. And then things like so when you take the solo, it also turns up the reverb to make up for the fact that you're not playing big chords anymore. That's when that stuff is really, really useful, I think.
Now I want to do that.
Yeah, well, I think you should. So I will revisit this in the future, and I will show off the board that I end up making, and I think that's exactly what I'll end up with. I'll basically end up with your board with those pedals going in the front of the amp and an HX Effects going in the effects loop. Because I would love to get like I love Universal Audio. They just released like a reverb and delay pedal, but they're like $400 each. The HX Effects is for like $400-$500, and it does everything. So that in the effects loop with the analog drives and maybe a mini wah in the front of the amp, and then switch it all from that. I think so. We're back to hybrid again. I think that's great.
Yeah.
I really think and like I said, that's kind of close to what you're doing there, because where's the pedal board gone? I've lost it now. You're basically, like I said, you're doing that because you've got the little TC pedal in the effects loop could also be a newer pedal that does more stuff. It could do other stuff too. So I think that's the way I would go. All right, great. I'm going to read through the chat, and then we're going to wrap things up. But I think that's been really interesting. And I hope it's been useful as well, because I hope if you are an acoustic player, I'm sure a lot of acoustic players watch this. I'm sure a lot of people watching Mondays also have electric as well. But if you haven't, hopefully this has been useful for you today. Because like I said, this is a huge topic, right? This could be, in fact, there's more to talk about with electric than there is Martin guitars. So we talk about Martins on Mondays for the last 15 months. We could talk about a delay pedal for a month, and then a chorus pedal for a month, and then string. It's just never ending.
That's true.
Spoon says, example 1 you played earlier was like David Gilmour, 2 was Stevie Ray, and 3 Elliot Randall on Reelin' in the Years. Okay, yeah, it's good. It's good.
I have that sound if you want to hear it.
Can you show us? It's good to have a reference in your mind of the sound you're going for. I often look on YouTube for isolated guitar. So I always thought I knew what like a Green Day sound was, but then when you find the actual isolated guitar track, it doesn't sound anything like what you thought it sounded like on the record. So check those out.
This is for Spoon. get to do that.
Well, that's worth mentioning. You wouldn't get that feedback from a modeler. You wouldn't be able to get it. So that's cool too. That's cool. My GPS is totally noiseless, which means no noise is coming from the pickups themselves, and any other noise is coming from the amp. Yes, the amp does have noise. That's true. But the pickups can also obviously add to that. The way to test it is to turn down the volume on the guitar to 0, and then if you still hear noise, that's the amp. So we're getting amp noise today, but remember, it's cranked. So you're going to get that.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Sometimes some people say that's part of the sound. Yeah. No one hears the noise when the band starts playing. Thomas Moore, I agree. And there's little things I've noticed with amps over the years, like the Mesa amps can make kind of a popping sound when you change channels. If you're at low volume, they can be noisy. Some of them have a fan built in. But you got to remember, when you're playing on a stage, you're not going to hear any of that stuff. But yes, tube amps can be noisier than like a Kemper and a Helix. There's like a hum control. You can turn the hum off. You know,
Really?
and yeah, you can get rid of noise completely if you want to. Great for recording. And also you could like change the amp after the fact. You could record with an orange and then change it to a Fender. So for recording, I think it's fantastic. But
Oh wow.
of course, when you're playing at volume, you're not going to care about noises and things like that. Although pickups can be a problem. They can be really noisy.
Yeah.
Kooky says, I didn't need a $500 Illich mod. I could have DIY'd it. Well, you could have DIY'd it, Kooky, but I don't do those things. Whenever I try to DIY mod something, I break it. Tone Wars says, preach. Tone Wars has a channel. It's more metal based, but just all amps, pretty much all amps now. And he actually got me kind of think. It's really, YouTube's been interesting because he's been playing amps on his channel, and I listen on Sundays. Maury's been playing the Martins through the microphones, and I've been listening to that. YouTube has actually made me, although it's digital and I'm watching on my phone, YouTube has actually been what's made me want to go back to analog. Because I'm hearing amps and acoustic guitars through microphones. And I never heard that. All I heard was modelers at my shows and online. It's really interesting that the YouTube has made me actually kind of crave the analog. It's weird, isn't it? It's kind of cool, actually. Never thought about it like that.
Okay.
Thomas Moore, I have an Eric Johnson Strat. I had one of those once. 54 AVRI anniversary. My favorite is the Eric Johnson or the Legacy. Those Eric Johnson Strats are cool. I had a red one that was like really rare. Very cool guitar. I think I had quite a fat neck though. Dr. McFarlane Studios. I once came home from work years ago and cranked my Fender Bassman head through a 212 cab. It was glorious, see? I did make sure none of my neighbors were home. Yeah. Of course, you know, volume is always a concern with this stuff. What AVRI, what's that? Reissue something? Oh, I don't know. I should know. I'm in trouble now. David Eidelberg, I learned to love quiet stages. I just sold my Mesa TA15. Why didn't you tell me? I have other small amps like my HK and my Matchless Lightning 15. But I also have an AC15, Mesa Roadster, and more. You know, it's... I agree with you, David. It's so nice to just take a Kemper to a gig and plug in direct. I get it. I do get it. When it comes down to it, will I actually want to take this head and cab to a gig? Or will I just grab the HX Stomp and just think, well, no one cares anyway? We'll find out. Stay tuned.
You care.
That's the thing. And I say that in jest because that's something I keep coming back to all the time. I hate seeing that online. The audience doesn't care. Yeah, and I don't really care about the audience. This is all for me. None of this tone search is for the audience. I know they don't care. They're not even listening. This is all for me. When I play, I want to feel like I'm Jimi Hendrix. That's what I want. Yeah. It's all for me. Thomas Moore, my bridge pickup sounds great on it. Good. That's always the one to get dialed in. What's on your analog pedal board, Kooky? I'm looking for a chorus. I want smaller too. EP boost. Yeah, see, I'm personally not really fussy about choruses and delays and reverbs. That's why I'm happy to use them from the HX effects or whatever. I don't really care about that stuff. I just want the bass tone to be fat and full.
Yeah.
For me, that stuff is just addressing. And I like the way that you can still use like analog drives in front of the amp, because I think keeping all the drives analog is cool. And that's why I think that's a cool piece of gear, that HX effects, because it can just be the dressing, the salad dressing, you know.
What salad?
Exactly. I mean, it can be the cheese on the burger. Jim says, has anybody played an Acus amp? Have I? I haven't played one yet. That's acoustic, right? I haven't played one yet. It's hard to find a gig these days where I can turn an amp loud enough to sound its best. I know that is a concern. And I think about whether I want to subject my ears to that volume. That's also a concern. But remember, in-ears can also fry your hearing as well. Be careful with that, especially drums and cymbals. Yeah, I get that too. It's all a trade-off. It's all a balance. It's all about the room you're in, the band you're in, the songs you're playing. It's not just analog versus digital. There's so much more to it than that. I have the Mesa 550 Express. It's cool, a bit too big. I got a great deal on it on Craigslist. You never see boogies on Craigslist. I had the 525 for a time. My friend sold it to me. It was the 1x10 speaker. Still sounding pretty good though. That was an older model now.
My bandmate has that Express 550 and it's awesome.
Yeah, they were good amps. Tube amps are great for the studio and modelers are great for live. See, I disagree. I think modelers are great for the studio and tube amps are great for live. But that's fine. We disagree on most things. We do. Iced coffee tones. Now I want a coffee from Starbucks. Thank you. I've got a Tweed Champ clone I modded with deluxe pine cab and 12-inch high sensitivity Alnico speaker for more volume. Sounds glorious. Plug straight in. I mean, with words like that, it should sound good, right? Deluxe pine cab and high sensitivity Alnico speaker. Thomas Moore thinks my Princeton sounds fantastic. I agree. I was really happy with that on Thursday. Check that episode. So I didn't talk about my rig today, but on Thursday I did go live with the Princeton, and I have done a video on this rechargeable little mini pedal board that I've been using. But eventually I'll make a video with my rig, like Maury's rig. I'll probably just make a video about that, and I'll play it on the thing. David Eigelberg says my 1965 Princeton Reverb. Nice. Is great. Is the bomb. I get flagged by YouTube. Is great, but I've already said it now. It's the bomb. I don't know what I want to gig it anymore. I've had to mic it with a drummer. Well, I was just showing this to Maury. Look, this thing is cool. You stick this under the amp's handle, and you screw the mic in here, and you plug a cable in. You know, I gotta say, as much as I love digital, is it really to run like an IR from the back of the amp? Even the new Badlander has IRs built in. Yeah, you could run a cable straight to PA. That's great. But you could also just stick this under the handle and stick a mic here and plug a cable into the mic. Does it really?
That's pretty cool.
Why are you saving there like 30 seconds? Of course, I guess with the Badlander, then you can run it at 0 volume. Whereas with that, you've got to have the amp turned up. So that's a consideration. Yeah. There's a lot of parts to all this that we talked about. Thomas Moore, anyone have experience with Neo speakers? They're much lighter, but some people say they don't sound as good. That's what the guys from Anderton said. I have an EV12 and it's too heavy in the amp. The speaker sounds great, but it's £19. Okay, I would say you have to just, with that kind of thing, you have to just try it and see. Denny says, I like tube amps, but I have a thing with using more electricity than I need to. It's funny, when I first got the Princeton, it smelt really strong. Talk about sound hole sniffers. That tube amp emitted this really strong smell, and I actually asked on the forum if that was normal, and they're like, yeah, it's tubes, they're cooking, you know. So I guess tube sniffers is my next project. Ugh. Thomas Moore says Maury has a roadie crew. Well, that's great, he's at a higher level than me. Bob Dobson says, when I play along with Maury and Clayton on Thursdays, he plays at home on his harmonica. I blast my harmonicas through a vintage Shure Green Bullet mic into my 1951 Fender Princeton amp. It sounds amazing.
Ooh,
yeah.
That's so neat.
Kooky says, Thomas Moore, actually my pedal board is half digital since the mixer and the Boss RC5 are digital. Only the pickup and preamp are analog. No IR, just an internal mic with Anthem-like circuitry. Cool. Thomas Moore says, Dr. McFarland, are you more of a fan of HX Effects or an HX Stomp for the front of an amp? I have an M9 and a Pod Go. I see you have videos of both. Will the Stomp work as a pedal board? I would probably use the HX Effects or the Stomp into the after the preamp, into the effects return. I wouldn't put it in the front. I want to use real drives in the front. Chazza's here. Thank you for being here, Chazza. Thomas Moore says the Mesa 550 is £50. That's why it's called the 550. No, 50 means 50 watts. But the thing is, I think £50 is that's as heavy as I'd really want to go for an amp. I think that's okay for a combo. BMO says the Mesa TA15 and the 112. That's cool. I hear good things about those amps.
Nice. Oh, yeah.
Have the Mark 525, says Mike. Great amp. Very cool.
That's awesome. That's what I should have kept.
Everyone wants the 525. They're really light, aren't they? So that head and the cab,
This big.
yeah, that weighs the same as a Kemper anyway, so who cares, right? I love Logicbox amps. Aaron, is there a review of the Red Label? Yes, I reviewed the pickup on my channel. Check that out. Great guitar for the money. Mark S says, good vibes. Thank you. David says, I saw Steve Miller Band live years ago, 20 years ago, and their stage was completely clear. All amps under the stage. I'm still going to say this, though. I still think that a great mic in front of the cab under the stage through the in-ears might sound a little bit better than the Kemper. Especially back then, because back then they didn't have Kempers, right? I know. I'm just gonna say what I think. It's my channel. I'll say what I want. Fine. I always hold back. I'm not holding back anymore. My gig next Saturday will include a 1951 Princeton. Wow. 1963 Fender Pro, both mic'd into PA, my 63 Strat, and my JD Telecaster. See,
Wow.
Bob Dobson is the man. Love it. If you're shooting for a particular classic sound, you can't go wrong just buying whatever they used on the recording. I totally agree with that. That's a great way to go too. David said your pedal board looks like an ancient SKB pedal board. And there's at least 3 cats on that board as well. I have the same problem. Some boards now don't have Velcro. You stick the pedal on with like a screw underneath, like a plate on the pedal, and you screw it underneath, and you don't get the cat hair stuck on it. Yeah.
Yeah, this is an old one for sure.
I think it's XTS from Nashville that does the tremolo mod. Very cool. So Maury will be doing that after the show.
Thank you.
Doctor says bow to your sensei. I think he's talking about you. I'm going to add a Bigsby.
All right,
Oh, he's talking about the
Napoleon
guitar.
Dynamite reference.
Talking about the guitar. He's going to add a Bigsby now, which is the trem arm, if you don't know. David says, I hear more reverb than delay. That's from the amp, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And Spoon says, Randall played a Strat, but you went with Reverend.
I didn't know that. I would swear that's a humbucker sound. I could be wrong.
Even on Electric Guitar Day, Spoon Phillips still has to come in with the answers. All right, let's wrap it up. I think that was great. I actually really enjoyed doing something different. I was worried that people might be upset. I was joking at the start of the show, but we are obviously doing Martin guitars on Mondays and mostly acoustic focused. I think it was cool to do something different, to give our ears a break. He's going to get it in there anyway. But I think it was cool to do something different. And I think if you are an acoustic player, you should explore the electric for sure. And it's funny, Maury, Kooky will always say with the acoustic guitars, with the Fishman pickups, they quack too much. The funny thing is with a Strat, people want them to quack. You ever thought about that?
Yeah,
People
that's
want
true.
the quack of a Strat.
Yeah, that's funny. That position is like the Mark Knopfler sound. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. But I think that was really interesting. I think it was great. If you're new to electric, I hope that was useful. If you've got any friends that are new to electric, please send them a link. And let's just give just before we go, Maury, you just posted a blog post, which I think our viewers would like to go and read. Can you just tell us what that is?
I can. Contrary to popular belief, the new Martin CEO is not Spoon Phillips. It's not Aaron Short. It is.
He doesn't know. He's got to look up the name.
It is not right in front of me. So check out the blog post.
You meant to say, I'm not going to tell you. You've got to go to maurysmusic.com and read the blog.
That's right. Our most recent blog post. Go to maurysmusic.com. On the bottom of the page, click Maury's blog, and you will find the answer before I do. But
Suddenly
congratulations.
everyone leaves the chat. That's a good way to get rid of people.
Right.
And we were just saying, and this we're definitely going to do this next week. We're going to do the Martin pick, which is now available from Maury's Music, right, Maury?
Yes, sir.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this throughout the week and make a little preview video on my channel, just like my first impressions and what I think of it, because I'm a devout user of the Jazz 3, and I'll make that clear as well. I think that's good to say that. But I'm going to try it, and I'll make a little comparison video of my favorite and this new one, and I'll post that so you can all watch it and get some thoughts together. And I think Maury might do the same thing as well. And
Yep.
I think if Spoon gets one this week as well, I think we'll come on next week and give our thoughts on it. I think that would be a good episode. I mean, that's incredibly geeky, but hey, let's just go more geeky. Why not? Right?
Sure.
Let's do it. So watch out for that on my channel this week. So just subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when I post that or when I go live. Maury, what's your schedule like, and where can people find you online?
Thank you very much for asking, and thanks for having me again today. I'm really flattered to be here every Monday. Tuesday, the Maury's Music Podcast happens. It's live every Tuesday on all the popular platforms. Wednesday at 4 p.m. on YouTube is virtual tour of our inventory. Thursdays usually is Martin versus Martin. Myself and Clayton from Martin Guitar go live on Thursdays on Facebook at 6 p.m. But this week is different because I have a real gig on Thursday. So do watch the
a real
the
Facebook
gig, a real one, a real like outside might get rained on kind of gig. So
are you going to
stream
Friday? Are you going to stream the gig on Thursday?
I'm going to try to. I'm probably not going to be able to do the stream justice, but I'm going to try to put a camera there.
Okay.
So watch our Facebook page. We might move it to Friday this week, and then that's it. Then Friday I'm off.
Cool. So let's do that, Maury. We're committing to that. Next week is the new Martin Lux pick. So we'll do that, and perhaps we'll have more information on the news Maury just shared. We can discuss that as well. That'd be cool. So tune in next Monday for that. That'll be a good episode. All right. So thank you for showing us your electric rig. I found it very useful, actually, as someone that's now building a board. So that was really good for me. And I hope everyone watching found it useful. And if you're watching after the fact, put your thoughts and comments below in the comments section. And we'll see you again during the week. If not before, we'll see you next Monday for our next show. So thank you, Maury. That was great.
Thank you.
Lee says, just pop back to say bye from me and Rosanna. And yes, I am the new CEO. LOL. All right, we'll see you soon. Thanks, Maury. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I'm not lost, but I'm not found.